Have you ever looked around and felt like you've already lived all of this before? Not with boredom, not with cynicism, but with a profound, unshakable knowing that somehow you've walked these streets, worn these faces, fought these battles many, many times. Maybe there's a part of you, silent but steady, whispering that your time here is drawing to a close. Not the end of life, but the end of a much longer journey, a journey of lifetimes. Throughout history, across cultures and civilizations, great sages and mystics have pointed to a deeper truth. Reincarnation is not an endless cycle. It is a path, one with a destination. From the sacred Upanishads of ancient India to the secret teachings of the Gnostics to the modern metaphysical explorations of our time, the message remains consistent. The soul evolves. It learns, loves, suffers, and remembers, until at last it is ready to return to its original wholeness. One of the clearest voices to bring this wisdom into the modern world was Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, who through thousands of trance readings mapped the intricate and magnificent journey of the soul through time and space. According to Cayce, and echoed by many spiritual traditions, some individuals alive today are not beginning their soul journey. They are finishing it. But how can you tell if you are one of these souls? What are the subtle signs, the quiet awakenings, that hint you may be living your last incarnation on Earth? Drawing from Edgar Cayce's revelations, supported by the latest insights in consciousness studies and woven with the timeless threads of ancient wisdom, we're about to explore 9 profound signs that could reveal the incredible truth about where you are on your soul's journey. If you feel a stirring inside, if something in you is leaning forward, eager to remember, then stay with me. Because what you're about to hear may not just explain your life, it may explain your lifetimes. There's a quiet kind of loneliness that some people carry, not because they lack connection, not because they're unhappy, but because deep down they just don't quite belong here. You show up for life, you work a job, you love your family, you even have friends and dreams and plans, and yet it all feels slightly off, like you're playing a part in a play you didn't audition for. If that resonates, you might be experiencing what Edgar Cayce called cosmic homesickness, a term he used in Reading 28422 to describe the subtle, persistent longing felt by souls nearing the end of their reincarnation cycle. You're not broken, you're not disassociated, you're just starting to remember something deeper. In modern psychology, this can resemble what's called existential detachment, a sense of being in the world but not fully of it. But unlike clinical detachment or dissociation, this state is not driven by trauma. It's not depression, it's a kind of peaceful distance. You see through the game of life, the race for wealth, titles, approval, and you just can't pretend it matters like it used to. Even iconic figures like Albert Einstein hinted at this. He once said, "Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." Einstein wasn't escaping life. He simply saw beyond it, as if he lived from a higher vantage point, connected more to the universe than to the social script. In Buddhism, this inner distance is closely tied to the concept of dukkha, the idea that worldly existence, no matter how pleasurable, will always fall short of the soul's ultimate yearning. Why? Because the soul doesn't want more things. It wants truth. It wants to remember what it really is. So if you've ever walked through a crowd and felt like you're the only one seeing behind the curtain, you're not alone. You may not feel at home because you've outgrown the house. Here's the truth. You don't need to force yourself to fit in. Instead, let that feeling guide you, not toward isolation, but toward deeper compassion for those still fully immersed in the illusion. They're not behind. They're just at a different place in the story. Honor where you are, and use your perspective not as an excuse to disconnect, but as an opportunity to uplift, to hold space for others while staying rooted in your own quiet knowing. That's not alienation, that's evolution. Let's talk about déjà vu. That strange electric moment when you're doing something utterly ordinary, walking into a cafe, turning a street corner, or hearing someone speak, and suddenly your mind whispers, "You've been here before." Almost everyone has experienced this, a fleeting familiarity, a mental glitch maybe. But what happens when it's not fleeting? What if these moments come often and carry details you couldn't possibly know? Souls approaching the end of their reincarnation cycle often report intense, frequent, and sometimes startling déjà vu. And it's not just a sense of recognition, it's knowledge. You know how a conversation will unfold before it begins. You visit a city for the first time, and somehow you already know the back streets. You meet someone and feel decades of emotional history within seconds. According to Edgar Cayce in Reading 29.8-1, these aren't hallucinations or mental errors. They are bleed-throughs from parallel timelines, glimpses from other incarnations, because at the soul level, time isn't linear. And modern science is starting to catch up. In theoretical physics, there's something called the block universe theory, which proposes that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. Every moment, every timeline is like a page in a cosmic novel, and your soul is flipping through the chapters, not in sequence, but all at once. One woman shared a powerful story. She traveled to a small village in southern Italy, a place she'd never heard of before. But as soon as she arrived, she could navigate it instinctively. She even spoke snippets of local dialect fluently, despite never studying Italian. No guidebook, no translator, just memory. But not from this life. And it's not just everyday people. Visionaries like Carl Jung believed that déjà vu could be a reflection of the collective unconscious, the shared soul memory of humanity. Jung himself often spoke of dreams and flashbacks to ancient rituals and lost civilizations, not imagined, but remembered. So what do you do when you experience this? Don't brush it off. Don't assume you're crazy. And above all, don't be afraid. Start journaling your déjà vu moments. Where did they happen? What did you feel, sense, or know? Over time, patterns emerge, and those patterns can lead you to profound truths about your past lives, parallel experiences, or even your soul's purpose in this life. Déjà vu isn't just a glitch in your brain, it's a whisper from your soul. A reminder that you are more than this one life, this one identity, this one moment. It's a clue that you are nearing the end of a much longer story. Death. It's the ultimate mystery, the final frontier that most people spend their entire lives trying not to think about. Fear of death is, in many ways, hardwired into human biology, its survival instinct at its most primal. But for souls who are nearing the end of their reincarnation journey, something different happens. Instead of fear, there's a deep, peaceful acceptance. Not resignation, not despair, but a kind of quiet understanding that death is not a tragic ending, but simply a doorway. Edgar Cayce described this beautifully. In many of his trance readings, he revealed that souls close to completing their earthly cycles carry subconscious memories of having died and lived many times before. For them, death is no more terrifying than falling asleep and dreaming. It's a transition, not a termination. This perspective echoes ancient teachings like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which describes death not as an annihilation, but as a shift of consciousness, like moving from one room into another, or changing channels on a cosmic radio. Take Steve Jobs, for example. In his famous Stanford commencement speech, he said, "Death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent." Jobs wasn't speaking from fear. He was speaking from a deep, almost mystical acceptance of impermanence. Shortly before he passed, his family reported that his final words were simply, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." Not terror, not clinging, just awe. If you find yourself unusually at peace with the idea of mortality, if death feels more like a reunion than an end, it could be a sign that your soul has completed its major karmic lessons. You're no longer driven by the desperation to survive at any cost. Instead, you're here to live fully, knowing that life is precious precisely because it is impermanent. Here's a radical truth. When you stop fearing death, you actually start living more vividly. You love harder, you forgive faster, you savor the small moments, sunlight through leaves, laughter shared, tears shed, because you know none of it lasts forever. And that's what makes it sacred. Instead of clinging, you can cherish. Instead of fearing endings, you can embrace beginnings, over and over. So if you notice that conversations about death don't make you uncomfortable, if you find yourself able to imagine the end of your story without panic, you're not being morbid, you're being awake. And maybe, just maybe, you're nearing the point where the soul returns, not to another life, but to the greater life beyond. Have you ever thought about someone and they text you seconds later, or wished for an answer, only to stumble upon it in a random book, a song lyric, or a conversation overheard at the perfect moment. When you're living near the end of your reincarnation journey, these moments aren't just coincidences anymore. They start to feel like threads in a larger tapestry, a tapestry woven with meaning. Souls nearing completion often notice that life begins responding to them, not randomly, not chaotically, but intelligently, as if the universe itself is part of the conversation. According to Edgar Cayce, this increase in meaningful synchronicities is a sign that the soul is awakening to its co-creative nature. In other words, you're not just a passenger in life, you're becoming a conscious participant in shaping it. And guess what? Quantum physics backs this up. The observer effect in quantum mechanics shows that the mere act of observing a particle changes its behavior, which means your consciousness isn't just reacting to reality, it's helping create it. Paulo Coelho, the renowned author of The Alchemist, captured this beautifully when he wrote, "When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it." He wasn't being poetic. He was speaking a deep spiritual truth. Think of Oprah Winfrey. She often speaks about how once she aligned herself with her true calling, doors seemed to magically open. The right people showed up. Opportunities fell into place. Not because she forced them, but because she was moving with the current, not against it. If you're noticing patterns that seem too perfect to be random, if you're feeling guided even when you don't know where you're headed, it's a sign. You're tuning into the deeper rhythms of existence, the language of synchronicity. Here's how to work with it. Start by paying attention. Don't dismiss these moments. Write them down. Reflect on what they might be nudging you toward, and most importantly, and trust them. Synchronicities are like cosmic breadcrumbs. They won't always tell you the whole path, but they will light up the next step. When your life feels woven with synchronicities, it's not random. It's not wishful thinking. It's a sign that your soul and the universe are dancing together in rhythm, in harmony, in a language older than time itself. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you no longer feel the burning hunger that once pushed you through life. Not because you've given up, not because you've failed, but because something inside you feels already complete. This is not apathy. It's not boredom. It's the profound loss of strong desires, one of the clearest signs that a soul may be approaching the final stages of its earthly reincarnations. Most of the world operates on wanting more success, more love, more money, more recognition. It's a constant reaching outward, a ceaseless chase for something just beyond grasp. But for those nearing the end of the cycle, that chase begins to quiet. Ambition softens, longing fades, and in its place, a profound sense of enoughness arises. Edgar Cayce described this phenomenon in Reading 1824-1. He explained that as a soul dissolves its karmic bindings, the attachments that fuel desire naturally fall away. There's no need to force renunciation. It simply happens. Introduce relatable, famous example. Look at Leonardo da Vinci toward the end of his life. Once a tireless creator, inventing machines, painting masterpieces, engineering grand designs, he eventually stepped back from public life, spending his final years in quiet contemplation in France. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't defeated. He had simply outgrown the need to prove anything to the world or to himself. Psychologists might frame this shift as self-actualization, the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where a person moves beyond striving for achievement and instead lives from inner purpose. But spiritually speaking, it's even deeper. It's the soul's recognition that nothing external can add to what is already whole inside. Maybe you've noticed it too. Goals still arise, but they arise naturally, not out of desperation. You might pursue a dream, but not because you believe it will complete you. You create, you work, you love, but without the frantic urgency that once shadowed your every move. And people may misunderstand this. They might see your calm and call it lack of ambition. They might think you've given up on striving. But deep inside, you know, you've simply remembered. You're no longer driven by the hunger of not enough. You are acting now from fullness, not emptiness. So here's the guidance. Honor this shift. You don't have to reignite artificial ambition to fit societal expectations. Focus on inspired action, not action fueled by fear or the need to prove. Trust your natural rhythms. Your soul already knows the way. It doesn't need chasing, it needs listening. Losing the fever of desire isn't the end of life's adventure. It's the beginning of a life lived from essence rather than from emptiness. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing everything you are called to do without needing anything in return. That is true spiritual freedom. And that is a whisper that your journey through lifetimes may be drawing gracefully, beautifully to its final act. There comes a moment when the solid world around you starts to feel less solid. When you walk down a busy street, hear the chatter of people, feel the ground beneath your feet, and yet somewhere deep inside you sense it's all a kind of dream. For souls nearing the completion of their reincarnation journey, this isn't imagination. It's an intuitive understanding that reality itself is constructed, a projection, a stage, a masterpiece of consciousness unfolding in form. Edgar Cayce often spoke of this thinning of the veil. As the soul matures through lifetimes, the rigid boundaries between self and world, subject and object begin to dissolve. You start to realize reality is not happening to you. Reality is happening through you. Interestingly, modern science is starting to echo this ancient wisdom. The holographic universe theory, proposed by physicists like David Bohm and supported by experiments in quantum physics, suggests that what we perceive as three-dimensional reality may actually be a projection of information from a two-dimensional boundary. In simple terms, life might be much more like a dream, a movie projected onto the screen of consciousness, than the fixed, hard reality we once believed it to be. Even Albert Einstein hinted at this when he said, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one." He wasn't being poetic. He was pointing at a truth the mystics have known for millennia. Maybe you felt it too. Moments where the edges of reality seem to blur, where the walls in your room feel alive, where the separation between you and the sky or the trees or the people passing by suddenly disappears. This isn't madness. This isn't escapism. It's awakening. The intuitive recognition that form is not fundamental. Consciousness is. So what do you do with this realization? First, don't fight it. Trying to snap back into old, rigid perceptions will only create confusion and resistance. Second, cultivate presence. Practices like meditation, breathwork, and mindful observation allow you to stabilize this expanded awareness without losing your grounding. Third, stay humble. Recognizing that reality is constructed doesn't mean dismissing it as meaningless. It means interacting with life with reverence, knowing it's all a sacred dance of energy and awareness. Life becomes less about struggling to control the illusion and more about flowing with it, loving through it, learning from it. You begin to see each conversation, each sunrise, each hardship as a ripple on the surface of a much deeper ocean. When you sense that reality is constructed, you are not disconnecting from life, you are seeing more of it. You're remembering that behind every form, behind every story, there is only one thing happening, consciousness exploring itself. And in that realization, you step closer to remembering what you truly are, beyond time, beyond space, beyond form itself. There comes a point on the soul's journey when you stop asking, "Who am I?" and start realizing, "I am not who I thought I was at all." For souls nearing the final stages of reincarnation, identity itself begins to feel less solid. Your name, your profession, your personality traits, all the labels you once wore like armor start to feel like costumes. Useful, yes. Beautiful, even, but ultimately temporary. Edgar Cayce described this as the soul's natural gravitation toward the superconscious state, a level of awareness where you experience yourself not as the character, but as the consciousness behind the character. Modern psychology hints at this too. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process by which a person realizes that their ego identity is just one small expression of a much vaster, unconscious whole. In Jung's later years, he even described moments of seeing himself almost like an actor in a grand drama, aware he was playing a role, but not mistaking the role for his true being. Think of Jim Carrey, the comedian and actor who, after decades of fame, openly spoke about his spiritual awakening. He said, "I used to be a guy who was experiencing the world. Now I feel like the world and I are one." And the character of Jim Carrey was just a construct. He didn't lose himself. He found the awareness beneath the self. Maybe you've started feeling it too. You catch yourself laughing at your own reactions, at your habits, even at the stories you once told yourself about who you must be. You realize your achievements, your failures, your past, your pain, none of them truly define you. They are experiences, not identities. And with that realization comes freedom. Here's how to nurture this shift. Observe your identity without attachment. Play your roles, parent, partner, leader, creator, but do so lightly, like an actor who enjoys the part but knows he's not the costume. Meditate on the I am beyond labels, not I am a doctor or I am a mother, simply I am. Stay compassionate with yourself. As old identities crumble, you might feel disoriented at times. That's okay, you're not losing yourself. You're meeting yourself more clearly than ever before. Life stops being about building an identity and starts being about expressing consciousness through identity, creatively, freely, lovingly. When your identity feels like a temporary mask, you're not less real. You are more real than ever before. You are remembering that behind every role you've ever played, the child, the rebel, the hero, the teacher, there is something changeless watching it all. You, the eternal witness, the timeless soul. At some point along the soul's long journey, compassion stops being a choice and becomes a natural state of being. For souls nearing the end of their reincarnation cycle, universal compassion arises spontaneously, without effort, without agenda, without even needing a reason. You don't just feel sympathy for those who are close to you. You don't only care for those who look like you, believe like you, or live like you. You begin to feel a deep, almost unbearable tenderness for all life. The stranger in the grocery store, the bird struggling in the rain, the ancient tree clinging to the side of a crumbling hill. Edgar Cayce called this state cosmic consciousness, a recognition that there is no true separation between beings. Buddhism describes it as bodhicitta, the spontaneous wish for the liberation and happiness of all sentient beings, arising naturally from a heart that remembers its unity with everything. Mother Teresa embodied this spirit. She didn't see herself as superior to the poor, the sick, or the dying. She saw herself in them. She famously said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." Her compassion wasn't heroic. It was natural. It flowed from the deep knowing that all beings are simply different expressions of the same divine essence. Maybe you've noticed this shift within yourself. Maybe you find yourself crying over news stories that once felt distant. Maybe you can't step on an ant without feeling a pang of sorrow. Maybe you catch yourself sending silent blessings to strangers as you pass them by. This isn't weakness. It's not sentimentality. It's awakening. It's your heart remembering its true size, vast enough to hold the entire world. Here's how to deepen this compassion without burning out. Set healthy boundaries. True compassion does not mean sacrificing yourself. It means loving wisely, offering what you can from a full cup. Practice small daily acts of kindness, a smile, a helping hand, a kind word. Meditate on interconnectedness. Visualize yourself as a wave in the ocean, unique but never separate. As you move through life with this spontaneous empathy, you begin to realize serving others is not a duty. It's the natural overflow of love remembering itself. And in that state, your very presence becomes a blessing. Without preaching, without forcing, without even trying, you become a quiet beacon, reminding others simply by being who you are that compassion is not something we earn, it's something we remember. There's a hidden rhythm to human life. A pattern weaves through our experiences, pulling us into the same old struggles, the same kinds of relationships, the same fears, the same mistakes dressed in different clothes. For most of us, it feels like an endless cycle, a wheel of karma that keeps turning. But for souls nearing the end of their reincarnation journey, something remarkable begins to happen. The patterns start breaking, spontaneously. You find yourself facing a familiar trigger, but this time, instead of reacting the old way, you pause, you breathe, you respond from a new place of clarity and freedom. Edgar Cayce described this as karmic completion. In his readings, he often spoke of souls who, through many lifetimes of trial and learning, had finally gathered enough wisdom to move through challenges rather than getting caught in them. Not by force, not by willpower, but by integration. Look at Nelson Mandela. After 27 years of imprisonment, he emerged not bitter, not vengeful, but filled with forgiveness and vision. He broke free from a karmic cycle of resentment and retaliation that had trapped generations before him. His liberation wasn't just political, it was spiritual. Maybe you've felt it too. The toxic relationship that once pulled you in no longer holds power. The fear that once paralyzed you now feels like a passing cloud. The anger that once burned so hot has cooled into compassion. It's not that life becomes easy, but your relationship to difficulty transforms. You stop fighting the storm and start learning how to dance in the rain. Here's how to support this natural liberation. Practice self-awareness. Notice the old stories when they arise, but don't identify with them. Honor your growth. Celebrate small victories, not with pride, but with gratitude. Stay open to grace. Sometimes the biggest shifts happen not through effort, but through surrender. When you break free from repetitive patterns without needing to fix yourself, you realize something powerful. You were never broken to begin with. You were simply learning. And now, the learning is becoming wisdom. As you experience the spontaneous liberation from old patterns, you're not just changing habits, you are closing ancient loops, completing stories that began lifetimes ago. You are arriving, slowly, gently, at the threshold where the soul no longer needs to repeat itself through form. You are standing on the edge of true freedom. The kind of freedom that comes not from escaping life, but from fully living it, fully loving it, and fully transcending it. So, are you living your final life on Earth? If you found yourself resonating deeply with several of these signs, it's possible that you are approaching the summit of your soul's long and winding journey through this world. But remember this realization is not about feeling special or believing you're somehow better than others. Spiritual growth is never a race. It's not about comparison. It's about returning to the wholeness that was always yours, beyond time, beyond form, beyond ego. Every soul is exactly where it needs to be. Some are just beginning their human experience, some are deep in the middle of their karmic story, and some are nearing the end, ready to step beyond the cycle into something vast, luminous, and free. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, let it inspire you, not to rush, not to strive harder, but to live each moment with greater presence, deeper compassion, and wider freedom, to savor your life, to bless your challenges, to cherish the sacredness of every breath, every sunrise, every connection. Because ultimately, whether this is your first lifetime, your last, or somewhere in between, the purpose remains the same: to awaken more fully, to love more deeply, and to embody the timeless truth of who you already are. Leave a comment below. Tell us which signs spoke most clearly to your soul's journey. We'd love to hear your reflections, and if this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to Awakened Wisdom, where we explore the mysteries of consciousness, the science of the soul, and the hidden maps that guide our awakening. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another moment of remembering who you truly are. Until next time, may your path be filled with light, and may your journey home be blessed with wonder.